one that falls within the canopy of the pakara that you hear today, and you don't hear tomorrow because they just fade out within 1 month. You don't want to listen to them anymore. Congratulations, Joe. Now, let's take you to something else. And this is Monday, and particularly on Mondays on the inside, we shift our attention to unfoldings and ongoings in the Roman Catholic Church, and precisely that operating under Cameroonian skies, because in a recently released pastoral letter, the bishops of Cameroon actually admitted that among their flock are men and women who openly claim to be followers of Jesus Christ, but in secret have their names enrolled on the rosters of institutions and shady organizations like Freemasonry and, of course, the Rosicrucian movement. That sounds quite embarrassing, right? And we just thought it was time to bring up that subject because Martin Jumbam, who is an author, is also a book writer. You probably have read some of his works already. And that's not all, because he manages the American Language Center in Douala. That's for publicity, right? If you're looking for where to enroll your kid to learn good English, that's where they should be going to. Anyways, let's come back to the crux of our discussion. Thanks for coming once again, sir.
Thank you, Divine, for welcoming me this morning. It's good to be here.
I'm always so upbeat when Monday comes around because the topics are, unlimited.
That's
in
right.
Scope.
Yes, they are. Something concerning the church. You can have lots of things to talk about.
Right.
This letter, the pastoral letter.
I just said it sounds quite embarrassing enough, but let's begin from the basics.
Right.
What are pastoral letters in the?
Oh, a pastoral letter is simply a letter a bishop will write to his flock.
Okay.
Comes from the word pastor. Pastoral letter. And the bishop is the shepherd of his flock.
Yeah, because bishops are synonymous to pastors.
That's correct. So bishops have the heads of the see, what you call the diocese, and they can write a letter to his flock on any subject.
Okay.
It can either be a bishop who write in his diocese, or it can be bishops of an ecclesiastical province, like Bamenda, ecclesiastical province of Bamenda, which consists of the diocese of Bamenda, the diocese of Kumbu, the diocese of Mamfe, Kumba, and Boya.
Okay.
You see, or can be a letter written by the bishops of all the bishops in Cameroon.
The
Episcopal Conference, yes. And the Episcopal Conference groups all the dioceses and dioceses of a country. And then the bishops can sit down and write a letter. And the letter we are talking about today is not the first Episcopal Conference of Cameroon. The bishops of Cameroon have written. Just from memory, you can think of a letter that was written against corruption. 1990, and then 10 years later, 2000, the bishops again, seeing that the corruption was
receding, it was
growing worse.
Yes.
You see? So they then sat down again and said, hey, we cannot watch the country go down the drain due to corruption. Then they again wrote the letter against corruption, which was in the press. I mean, it made quite some
I remember
quite some headlines
for the Herald newspaper at the time.
Right.
It was a scoop.
That's right. So, and then almost during elections in this country, you see the bishops will again issue a pastoral letter. The pastoral letter will be to guide Catholics, and to, at least, not only Catholics, but to tell the powers that be, to make sure that elections are free and fair. That is the right of every Cameroonian to have free and fair elections.
All right.
You see, whether that is always respected is another issue altogether. And then you had the bishops of the Diocese of Bamenda in 2016 writing a letter, a pastoral letter, cautioning people, at least in the Diocese of Bamenda and elsewhere, the situation in the country was degenerating with this Anglophone crisis.
That was the genesis of the crisis.
That's right, the Anglophone crisis. The bishops always serve like a beacon, they start warning. And, That warning was not heeded, unfortunately, and we are where we are today. You see, and then 2019, the Episcopal Conference of National Episcopal Conference of Cameroon came up with this letter, which is the pastoral letter against Rosicrucianism, Freemasonry, and witchcraft, sorcery, and all that goes with it.
That was not the first time. That was not the first time they were speaking out against these.
Oh no. If you go back in time, you'll see that they had spoken against this this phenomenon, especially the phenomenon of witchcraft and sorcery, which is part and parcel of our traditions. Mm-hmm. You know, that clash with the teachings of the church. So it's the bishops feel that it's their role and their obligation to point out that some of these things go contrary to the teachings of the church.
But some of these people claim to believe in God.
Right. You know, as the bishops say in their letter, they are Christians. Even Freemasons and Rosicrucians, and they practice witchcraft and sorcery.
They believe in the same God that Christians do.
So the bishops are saying, no, you cannot be a Rosicrucian or a Freemason and be a Roman Catholic, for the simple reason that Freemasons don't believe in Jesus Christ, and Freemasons and Rosicrucians, you know, they're very highly secretive society. Mm-hmm. You know, they do their things in secrecy, which is contrary to what the church teaches. The church
we should see transparency.
Transparency is Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is the light. You know, the light does not. You should shine and throw light everywhere. But if there are shady corners and people hiding somewhere to do something,
I mean, there are skeletons in some closets, right?
Yeah. So there are things which are not right. And Rosicrucians and I believe the Freemasons don't accept some of the teachings of the church, of course. Now they don't believe that Jesus Christ is...
That's fundamental. It means, I mean, you just draw the line and say...
They have their own definition. And in terms of the Catholic Church, they reject some of the dogmas of the church, like the Holy Trinity, the Incarnation, the resurrection, the ascension of our Lord into heaven, the Immaculate Conception of Mary, and the Assumption into heaven of Mary, and so on. Those are the very fundamental dogmas of the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. And if you reject them, you definitely are not a Catholic. And you know, the Freemasons and Rosicrucians don't believe in these things. In fact, they consider God as just the great architect of the universe. Is that definition there. Oh, right. And they are divided up into lodges. You have the lodges, and the lodges, each lodge has a Grand Master. You know, and you know, many of them, and hardly does anybody know what's going on there. The bishops,
yeah, because if you ask the man on the streets in Cameroon, for example, they'll tell you that people struggle to gain access and enrollment in some of these orders because they are power hungry.
Oh yeah, I mean it is believed just about everywhere that Freemasons and Rosicrucians are very powerful.
So they're actually the ones ruling Cameroon as we speak.
Right, that's what people say. I mean, it is even said that if you're going to be appointed to a high position in Cameroon, you must be a Freemason or a Rosicrucian. You and I don't know that. We have not been appointed up there. So, but there is that very strong belief in Cameroon that people who are ruling this country, you know, being influenced by Rosicrucianism and by Freemasonry, and that they're part and parcel of it. And I don't know how many years ago it is when the Grand Lodge of the Grand Master of a lodge in France came to Cameroon and was received in Unity Palace.
Yeah, State House.
In State House. You know, and what did the press not say? I mean, you know, everybody went, the whole thing went viral. You know, meaning that you see people like that given a red carpet in the seat of power. Mm-hmm. You know, obviously people have their own interpretations.
Yeah, you can draw the insinuations and so on. But then I didn't see any reservations for punishment from the church if it actually pinpoints some of these people among the flock.
Oh yeah, there's punishment. You will not. If you are a Rosicrucian, a well-known Rosicrucian, you will not be allowed to take the sacraments in the Catholic Church.
I thought excommunication.
Yes, excommunication will be excommunicated. Okay. Yes, for sure. I mean, it's very clear. You know, when you look at the history of the Catholic Church and some of these groups, Rosicrucianism and Freemasonry, you know, the encyclicals against these movements way back in the 18th century.
Okay.
Yes, the different popes.
Actually saw it coming.
Yeah, the different popes have spoken against it. And up to today, you know, as recently as the pontificate of Benedict XVI, I think they excommunicated some priests and bishops. I read that in Australia because they're freely preaching that Rosicrucianism and Freemasonry were accepted in the church. Right. And the Pope said, no, you know, you cannot be a priest and a bishop and be preaching this type of doctrine.
Okay.
It's going counter to...
I'm just wondering, has the church in Cameroon got the power enough to sanction some of these people? Because I know, I've heard, sometimes it's hard to verify such information, right, that some of the biggest envelopes that come to the church in the name of offering and alms, yeah, and tithes and so on are from some of the powerful people who are Freemasons and Rosicrucians.
Yes, we hear that all the time.
Can the church, I never heard the church kicking them out of.
I haven't either, and that is an open question. But let me say that some years ago, I think probably less than 10 years ago, there was a very popular Presbyterian pastor, you know, who told one of the ruling people in the country, the man brought an envelope to help him because he was building a church in Yaoundé, and the man said, no, take your money away. Okay. You cannot be a Rosicrucian and be bringing money to the church. So this does not seem to only touch the Catholic Church. It seems also from the Bami, Pastor Michael Bami, I think he was called.
Yes.
Yes, he was very, very categorical, and he rejected the presence and an envelope from one of the top leaders of our country, very openly. And so it would seem that, well, I can only speak for the Catholic Church because of I'm a Catholic. It would seem from his reaction that the Presbyterian Church too have reservations accepting this people, and they should, because Rosicrucianism and Freemasonry reject the divinity of Jesus Christ. They
if you deny Jesus Christ, then you don't have the right to be in his church. You
deny the death and the death of Jesus Christ, his suffering and his resurrection. If you don't believe in the resurrection, you're not a Christian.
That's what the Bible is all about.
For sure.
If you can't believe in the Bible,
it's clear. So I was not surprised that that pastor was brave enough. He's perhaps the only pastor, to my knowledge, that had done that.
Yeah, because it's, I mean,
yes, I haven't heard any bishop turn out a Rosicrucian or a Freemason from church or refuse to give them the sacraments. Maybe they do it secretly, but it's not. It's not.
Shall we draw in the conclusion that, openly speaking, the church is weak in Cameroon?
Weak, I don't know.
The
church has all the authority. You know, the bishops have all the authority to sanction, you know, the people. But the idea usually is not sanction may not necessarily be what is uppermost in a bishop's mind. It should be, you know, conversion, bring the person back to the faith. And that's why I believe they send out a letter like this to say, look, you know, some people may be in there.
We know that you are here.
Yeah, in there, but you know, you need to come out, and this is the reason why you should leave this group, and so on. And some people feel bound in there. We are told that once you are in there, you cannot get out. Yes, because you know, since everything is esoteric, is operating in secrecy, we don't know what's going on in there, and people feel that if you get in there, you are locked in there, you cannot get out.
For the rest of your life.
That's right. So it is for the pastors of the church to say, no, you can come out, and you will be welcome into the church. The idea is to welcome people back.
All right.
Yes.
Now let's leave the white man and his thing and come back home to Africa. And that letter, the preoccupations in there stretch to encompass witchcraft, which is very close to home now. Yeah,
witchcraft, sorcery, magic, and all the phenomena, which is very much embedded in our own traditions. The bishops too are warning Christians against belief in that. But let me tell you, there is a group here in Collège Liberman.
That's in Douala.
Here in Douala, yes.
Right.
Collège Liberman, was created by a Jesuit father. He's of late now, Father Eric Derone. He's studied the traditions of the Douala people in depth. You see, and they have a group here that has been studying sorcery and witchcraft to a considerable extent. I attended one of their seminars once in Collège Liberman, and I was amazed when they told us they have studied the sorcery and witchcraft to a considerable extent, but then nobody, even the people who are said to be the sorcerers themselves and the witches or wizards, cannot tell you precisely what it is. Let's say that, you know, because it is wrapped in mysticism, in mystery, you know, nobody can tell you exactly what it is. Or that it really is not something more of the mind than reality.
It's abstract and abstract.
Yeah.
So they get possessed and they just get doing the things without knowing.
Yeah, what really, that struck me, you know, because I had studied when I was at the university in the literature class to see the how African writers were handling African traditional religions and issues like that. And just in about every book that is written by an African, especially back in those days, maybe now quite differently, there was always reference to witchcraft, especially references to traditional medicine men.
All right.
Yes, the Ngambe men.
Yes.
Very powerful. They are said to have possessed all these powers. How do they get them? If they use them for good, that's fine. But if they use them for evil, then that's something. But there's a whole mysticism around the whole thing, and and it can really be bad. Let me tell you an encounter I had once. This is about 6-7 years ago. Coming from my house to the office in the morning, about 7 o'clock, and there was a huge crowd out there in Aquanol coming to a big crowd around the house. You know, I stopped my car, came out, and I saw an old woman. This was really an old woman, you know, who seemed to be definitely ill or Alzheimer's or disease or had lost her way. And she was sitting there. Everybody was crowding around her, shouting, "Hey, sorcier, sorcier."
I begin to imagine.
So I asked what was happening, and then they said she had just flown in on an aeroplane and dropped there. And everybody was excited. And one person asked her, there was a small tin of sardine, empty tin, standing there.
That was the place.
The man said, somebody said, "Mais c'est ton avion là?" And the woman said, "Oui, c'est mon avion." Everybody shouted. I felt really bad.
And in cases like that, she gets beaten or lynched.
Man, I felt bad. So I mentioned to one of the person, "But this woman is ill." Yeah. And the man turned around to me and said, "You with your book, ill what?" The woman is a witch. I left from there and I went to my office, and since then, each time I pass by there, I wonder whatever happened to that woman. So you see, definitely somebody who was ill, you know. And I think of it because my mother passed on some years ago. She had reached a stage where she was pretty old. Okay. And she was she would lose her mind. She would go wandering around.
Yeah, she gets lost.
And it was good that it was in the village. Everybody knew her.
Okay.
And we told them, when you see Mama going somewhere, just bring her back. And, you know, kids who are playing around will see her just wandering off, and they will bring her back to the house. Okay. You know, so definitely, I feel really bad. So things like that, you know, they are linked to witchcraft and sorcery and things like that. Right. And they cause a lot of harm to our people.
To the north of Ghana, because we've been there to do a couple of reporting for various media organs.
Right.
Women who are considered witches have been, you know, they get removed from the lands of their ancestors and they get exiled
somewhere
to Guinea.
Ostracized somewhere.
And they stay there for the rest of their lives.
That's sad, you know. Those are the things the church is talking about anyway. You know, and the recommendations the bishops give in the divine, as we see, they recommend that these phenomena be taught in major seminaries, in houses of formation, and in Catholic theology faculties.
Okay.
Yes. And this struck me when I read that, because John Paul II, in his encyclical, in Ecclesia in Africa, which we discussed here some time ago, had made the same recommendation in 1995 to the church in Africa, you know, study this phenomena in light of the of inculturation. You see, if we are going to incorporate some of these of African beliefs into the church or into the gospel, we were going to have the gospel purify them, in, as a sense.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking and saying that inculturation, as prescribed by the Pope, you know, should allow the church to embrace witchcraft.
Well, allow the church. No, the Pope doesn't say
Probably
that. Anyway.
Embrace and tame it. You know?
The Pope simply says, you know, we should study them and see how those things can be. There are practices in Africa which are inimical to man and to our being.
Okay.
You know, something like this happening to this poor woman. If the phenomenon had been studied and brought in, the people will understand that the woman was ill.
Okay.
Yes, and so we need to study that. But my point here, Divine, is that if the Pope had made this recommendation in 1995, and 35 years later, we see the same recommendations in the bishop's letter.
Someone is definitely
someone
not doing
didn't do their work
job,
along the way. Because if they had studied this phenomenon, this phenomenon of witchcraft and sorcery, as the Pope had recommended, among other things anyway, I mean, there are many other traditional beliefs and activities that need to be understood.
Okay.
Because if you don't understand them, the Christian is in church in the morning, and in the night he's the one dancing and performing some of these things. You know?
Sending thunder to go strike an enemy somewhere. I mean, that's quite sad to hear.
So we really need to understand this, and the bishop's concern is understandable. But it is their, you know, the recommendations, which if they are just recommendations, they may remain just recommendations on paper. If nobody does anything practically
to reality.
Yes, to bring them to fruition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming.
My pleasure, Divine. Always a pleasure to be here.
Right, and I just want to say that greetings and very, you know, fervent greetings to all of you who've been reacting to this segment of the program. Just keep sending your contributions. Very soon there will be some piece of good news for you, because you are going to be able to watch segments of the show on YouTube. Before we get there, let's get down to Uganda, to the streets of Kampala. Our guide is our friend, Teacher Mpamire, and he combs the streets of that city with two questions at the back of his mind. The first, what is spinal cord? And the second is, what would you do if you found out that you have toothpaste? It's not a disease, right? It's the paste that you use in brushing your teeth. Just listen to the reactions from the streets of Kampala.